Observation 1 is the resolutional analysis. The ACE point is the resolution. The United States Department of Education should create tuition caps for institutions of higher education that award federal student loans or grants. The BC point is that policy net benefit is the best criterion for the debate, allows both teams access to predictable burdens and methods of refutation. The CISA point is that we don't represent the historical actions or ethics of the government. We only represent this action. This is our ethic. The observation 2 is the background. That is that college is pricey. We're all incredibly privileged to be here right now. That's the plan. The United States Department of Education will create tuition caps for public institutions of higher education that award federal student loans capped at $6,000 a year, adjusted for local inflation and cost of living. Are there any questions?
Yep.
Cool. Advantage 1, access to education. The ACE point is the uniqueness. The first argument is that education is pricing students out of the educational process right now. The little A is according to the Civil Rights Project at UCLA, the prices are too high. Students are being forced to work too many hours to be able to keep up with their studies, and in extreme circumstances, students are even being forced to drop out as a result of their inability to balance the work-school relationship. The little B is that there is $1 trillion of student loan debt in the United States right now, and this has eclipsed credit card debt. We have more obsession with student loans than credit cards. That's pretty alarming. The B point is the length. The first argument is that the plan text passes, which will cap tuition. The second argument is that this spotlights the issue because there's federal reform coming at addressing the tuition crisis that we are facing in the United States right now. We have seen rising tuition all over. We need to do something about it. The third argument is that this will also lead to a perception shift that the federal government is addressing the specific issues of individuals who are being priced out of education and the status quo. The CISA point of the impacts. The first argument is accessibility. The little A is that we are going to see better outcomes in school because individuals are going to be able to spend enough time on their schoolwork as a result of being able to decrease the number of hours that they're working to be able to support themselves while they're in school. When tuition goes down, they dramatically decrease the amount of money that they need to be able to earn in order to be able to provide for themselves that year. It means they decrease their hours. The little B is that individuals are going to be able to stay in school, that the individuals who aren't able to balance the work-school relationship right now are going to be more likely to be able to stay in school. I'll get you at the bottom of the impacts means that these individuals are going to have access to education. The little C is that that individuals are going to be able to enter school, that individuals who think right now that college is too expensive then aren't entering as a result are going to see this change and see that they're able to enter school and are going to be able to afford it. The second argument under the impacts is education. The little A is that this leads to a direct increase in income, that college graduates have a statistically higher probability of earning money over the course of their lifetime. The little B is that these individuals also can avail themselves of more resources as a result of the largely liberal arts focused education in the United States. These individuals are more aware of the resources that are available to them both in their local communities and through the government. The little C is that they are going to be able to advocate for their communities, that when individuals get adequate training in things like communication and debate, that they are better able to advocate for the communities that they come from to resolve the structural issues that are causing the inequalities we're seeing right now. The little D is that this is going to be able to solve back for some portion of cyclical poverty, that individuals who find themselves trapped in poverty and are being forced to make decisions between buying things like food and buying things like healthcare are necessarily dying faster as a result of their choices. They just get to pick the way that they die faster. It means that we're going to be able to resolve this. But the third argument under the impacts is ruralism. The little A is that ruralism is a place-based form of discrimination not encompassed by classism, sexism, or racism that is entirely based on individuals being outside of the urban center. The little B is that the educational policy is failing the rural populations right now, that there are too few schools in these areas and that they are not targeted by college outreach programs. College outreach programs are largely in inner cities, but this entirely ignores the 7.9 million rural Americans. The little C is that we provide recognizance of their place-based needs by making it more accessible through affordability, means that these individuals, through spotlighting and perception and the decrease in cost, are going to be able to have more ability to both advocate for the community and be able to get into education in the first place. The little D is that this resolves with the logic of genocide, that right now the rural populations are being constructed as disposable by the federal government, that they are where we send our toxic waste and they are where we send our prisoners, that we just entirely disregard them in all decision calculus and the status quo, and we are able to resolve that. You got a question?
Yeah, only public institutions, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. The second advantage is the economy. Advantage 2 is the economy. The ACE one is the uniqueness. The first argument is that the economy is increasing but fragile right now. The little A's, you can look at the S&P, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ Composite, which were all in the green at the end of the last trading period and are showing increases right now. The little B is that the labor participation rate shows that only 96 million Americans are not participating right now. It means that these individuals don't have access to employment. The little C is that you can look at U6. The U6 employment standard from the BLS is at 12% right now. It means that this many Americans are incapable of finding work in the status quo. The B1 is linked. The first argument is that the plan text happens, capping the tuition rate at public institutions. The second argument is that we are going to avoid the debt bubble bursting, which you can cross-apply the $1 trillion student loan debt from Advantage 1 here. that we're going to be able to avoid the student loan debt bubble bursting, which would necessarily have catastrophic consequences for the United States economy. They see supporting over the impacts. The first argument is that the United States economic collapse. The little A is that millions would be forced into poverty. You can cross-apply the poverty impacts from the second impact scenario on advantage one. The little B is that this would lead to an international collapse because the United States represents 11% of the global GDP and 20% of the global consumption of goods. It means that we necessarily are the cornerstone of the international economy. The second argument is resource wars. The little A is that international collapse is not going to end our desire for hedge, that all countries are still going to pursue having dramatic militarization, that we are going to fight to control resources to be able to maintain the armies that we have right now. The little B is that conventional war would kill millions, that as soon as countries go to war with each other to be able to guarantee access to things like oil and things like water, that these countries are necessarily going to enact very large-scale violence to get control over the resources that they need. The most probable scenario would be a conflict over the Senkaku Islands between China and Japan, where they're attempting to control resources for rare earth minerals so that they can develop the military technology that they want right now, and that as soon as there's an international collapse, this is necessarily going to trigger and lead to the death of millions of Japanese. The little C is that this could lead to loose nukes, that as soon as resource wars start happening, borders become blurred and control over... sorry, what?
No, sorry.
We're good. And then, loose nukes because borders become fluid and countries have an inability to be able to provide for the protection they need at their nuclear facilities, means that this is going to lead to loose nukes, that organizations could necessarily get access to nuclear weapons. That was particularly key because the United States is retrofitting our nuclear weapons right now, means that they're all in more exposed locations than they normally are. They aren't buried underground like they typically would be. They're in labs being retrofitted. This could lead to the possibility of a false flag operation if an organization gets access to a nuclear weapon. This necessarily leads to the ability for an organization to detonate a nuke to make it look like another organization. This leads to the little d, which is international global nuclear conflict, that even a small-scale exchange would lead to a 30% decrease in food production, but a large-scale exchange would block out enough solar energy to cause a complete lack of vegetation, means extinction.
Okay, order is going to be 3 off, and then case in order, and there will be some stuff on the policy page, so...
You might want to float on another sheet.
Okay, so 3 off, are any particularly long?
Yeah, the second one will be.
Okay, I like to float case on 4 sheets, so do I need, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 3 off solvency arguments, correct?
Yeah.
And then add 1, add 2?
Yeah, and the second one is the long one.
Copy.
Oh, there it is. Got it.
That's my second, build that twice.
Alright. I found the first advantage, so that's good.
I mean, you can use it.
We don't mind. It's just on the other side of the second advantage. That's fine. Alright, everyone ready?
Yeah.
Do that.
I don't know. Okay. For the totality, interpretation that institutions of higher education that award federal student loans and grants means all institutions that award them violation of violation. They only have public institutions. This is critical because even private institutions are covered by this because they receive federal loans. If any private institution has a student who is receiving federal aid, then they fall under this interpretation. When this violation means they only cover public schools. They answer that in cross-execution hold of them. Next to the standard versus ground, they take away all the ground we have to argue about private schools and pick on private schools. That should be core and A ground to be able to parametricize within the affirmative self activist literature. This is in the literature. The government has sway over organizations. We're going to talk about Title IX. We're going to talk about Title IX later about how Title IX applies because the governments have this way over. Third is limits. They want to limit the resolution so that they can just say that public schools are good. This is a voter for this. A primary issue for current education. What a competing interpretation. Limit judge intervention. Next, the criticism framework. The interpretation of the negative is allowed 1 conditional testing affirmative methodology. The negative is allowed 1 conditional testing affirmative methodology. First of all, offensively, as the gateway is finding value and question knowledge is the ultimate act of political power that determines what a response to issues as literally as he to education. Don't set a certainty exists without establishing inventing method. Otherwise, there's no reason to leave the affirmative to little C's as key to sexual policy making, and we have to be able to accurately assess that goal to understand that we're treating the cause and not symptom, sexual defense, little A's as fairly affirmative, and either entire methodology or saying that their own is pretty dope, little A's as predictable, common sense proves that epistemologist forms question and thesis. We speedily invent the methodology of marginal legislative fixes to attempt to resolve structural economic problems that are deeply embedded in capitalist production. These propagate the norms of the status quo. The only way to solve it is through approach rooted in class analysis. The links. Firstly, the controls and oppressions located by the affirmative are the result of capitalism. Trying to get through obscure contradictions and obscure suppressions. Little is that when the rule of capitalism was challenged in the 19th century as a socialist movement gained steam, then capitalism responded by brutal attacks on like fire hoses and Pinkerton and cops. A little beyond this, that capitalism responded by trying to hide its forced tyranny and master forced oppression. Send them abroad. Little is that this resulted in capitalism creating a new system where capitalism was seen as being rooted in bureaucracy and education, where capitalism was oppressing people. It was granting them access to education. The second link is that the affirmative seeks an extension of white male bourgeois privilege. They talk about how they're going to get rural people into the education system, but this is the possible capitalism. Little is that education, the good goal, but capitalism requires a disengaged proletariat on the fringe of society. There is the affirmative's ignorance of classes on an oversight is a way to distract them from the harms. Class is a relational concept and explains how we relate to each other. It means that class analysis is the only way that we can ever actually solve it.
Look at the fact that kids are dropping out of school because they have to work.
Yeah, look at the fact that kids are dropping out of school because they work, and there's higher effects when talking about how we just see how we need to lift people out of poverty, but capitalism means that's never possible. The impacts, first at least, who want to chase and lays out when we see regulations of the way that people are being oppressed and that people are being kept in poverty. And the only way that we ever see to solve that is to have more regulations. We never looked at the class analysis that is needed to solve. Second, that a racist laws and inquiry. Little is that they only focus on rural people and how rural people are excluded. Don't see that, and don't see that as not just poor rural people, it's poor people everywhere. There's that capitalism leads to implementation of all life on earth because capitalism relies on exploiting people and the environment, which leads to no value to life and full ecological devastation, which leads to extinction. The alternative text. Vote Neg to adopt the method of structural and historic criticism, that is the L&C. Vote Neg to adopt the method of structural and historic criticism, that is the L&C. So, I'll get you the ball again. For assaulting first, only the alternative can inform that we will methodologist forms question that class reveals the limitations of the affirmative approach of the next to the program. First, that capitalism is inertial. The form retains a little bit of capitalism allows it to regenerate. This is our link to the error. Second, that you distract the lines that allow our class analysis to be appropriate. Third, that your good terms are not answered because we do not advocate the thought of capitalism nor can your methodology be reduced to capitalism is good. You have your question?
What method of historical criticism do you use?
We look at our links. We tell you the history of capitalism. We tell you our class analysis is the only way to solve. Sorry, I don't have time. Going on to the disadvantage now. Disadvantage is politics. Unique is that Democrats won the Senate. Now, first of that, structurally ahead of the Obama ground game. Obama ground game is really strong. He built in 2012, and now Democrats have reached out to more people in key swing states. Second is that Democrats are winning in key swing states. Little A's out of they're substantially ahead. 47 states only need 3 to win. Little B's states like South Dakota are trending Democrat. On October 8th, the USA poll found the Republican was dropping 4% in support, and also has been backed by recent scandal. Little is that Democrats are investing their fundraising edge. They have more fundraising. The Republicans have recently invested $1 million in South Dakota, which is tenfold of all the money that's spent on there before. The links is that the plan caused the GOP to win the Senate. First, the plan is universally unpopular extension of the federal government to education. Little you can look to the Common Core, which has been pretty broadly opposed across the political spectrum. People for the states in the free market to dictate education. This is setting tuition rates that are radically low rate, which means that people on like a second of the plan. The plan values Republicans to create key swing states. Little A's that South Dakota, Kansas, and Alaska, all states that Democrats can win right now, but they're states that are really dominantly Republican. The voter registration, South Dakota is 46 to 34 Republican and Democrat, which means that all you need to do is value the base to win, that's sufficient. The internal links of that GOP Senate destroys Iran talks. The first argument is that talks are sitting down. Little A's that Iran is making concessions that is halted enrichment of uranium 20%. Little B is that the U.S. has been reciprocating and has dropped the demand that Iran totally threw out the nuclear problem. Second, the GOP will sanction Iran if they win or will dictate the terms of negotiations. It's an easy foreign policy win, and some Democrats are supporting. Third is that sanctions cause Iran to revamp the nuclear problem. Little A that Iranian parliament promised that if there were sanctions, they would mandate enrichment of uranium 80%. First, this necessarily causes an Israeli first strike. Little A that Israel sees Iran to be an existential threat in the world when they have nuclear weapons. They don't believe that the U.S. will be able to aid them because Iran is simply too close. So they'll strike to prevent them from reaching critical passing when they reach one without being affected. The impact is that it impacts the economic collapse. Little A and Israel first strike necessarily leaves Iran to mines that they were removed with their 8,000 mines. This is what they said they would do if Israel first strikes them. This leads to a collapse in the global economy because 40% of the world's oil flows through the state of Hormuz. This is 4 times as much as was disrupted the OPEC oil embargo and prices rate 400%. This will necessarily be 4 times worse than that. You can cross-apply the economic collapse scenario here leads to extinction. On solvency. The first argument is a court term. The first argument is that the plan is constitutional and the government is unable to regulate the price of private goods.
The price of,
The price of private goods literally is the president of the United States, the rule of the government was unable to regulate schools of the common cause. Little means that this means that the plan is necessarily struck down, rolled back, which means they don't have any solvency. It's just link into the tax.
and still links into text.
Yeah, and still into the politics. The next the Title IX term. The first argument that Title IX is effective now. Little is that Title IX is successfully raising the sexual assault to be a major issue. Little means that you can see how it's getting people more access to the sports and also cracking down on sports teams. The second argument in this is that Title IX only applies to schools with that receive federal funding. Little is that this allows the Department of Education to have leverage over them, which is key for the government to be able to ensure the implementation of Title IX. The third argument is that plan gives incentive for the schools to go away from federal grants. It sets their tuition rate to an unsustainably low rate, which means that they won't be able to maintain open, and they'll have to be able to sever from federal funding in order to make their tuition be something more reasonable. The impacts of this or that Title IX effect by stopping things like sexual assault and the cycle of violence against women that exists on college campuses, which means it's necessary and is a piece of independent offense. Go on to go on to case. On the first advantage. On the third advantage, they say it's a perception shift. We say that Republican may necessarily turn in this in the world. We say the perception that is a perception shift, and the reality of people don't want the federal government to be involved in education. Also the impacts we say is accessibility. We say you just lead to college becoming the new high school, or college just becomes something everyone has. No one actually gets more access to education. Also, we say education leads to dollars to more money. We say that's probably a great link into the criticism. Yeah.
No private institutions means there's still a divide.
Yeah, no private institutions means there's still a divide. Private degrees are valued more. On the second advantage, I'm going down to the impacts. We say wars that conquers in the inevitable and world in out of nation pivot. Also, no nuclear weapons are never stolen when they were just secured with bike locks.
I didn't do the last part. Time.
It was a stupid argument.
What's that?
It was a stupid argument anyway. Pakistan used to have bike locks on their nukes. True facts.
No one ever stole them.
Yeah.
Did I
Yeah.
sure that right? Bike locks on
Bike locks on nuclear weapons, yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
So
no,
I mean,
actually,
that
yeah.
seems pretty
Not anymore.
That's a bare minimum threshold.
I mean, I guess it's better than
My bike got stolen at school, or my nuke got stolen.
So
Alright.
I'm saying bike locks don't work. Corey,
Yes.
I need the bike locks don't work.
Okay.
The order is?
The order of top Cali, and then the critique, which is going to go the alternative and alternate solvency, then the links, then the framework, then it's going to go the disad,
Okay.
then our case, which will go solvency, advantage 1, then advantage 2.
Can I repeat this back to you?
Yes.
Awesome. So I have the T, the alternative, all solvency, links, frameworks, sysad, solvency debate, add 1, add 2.
Yes.
Awesome.
Sorry, can I get the order of the K one more time?
Certainly, it will be the alternative, the links, the framework, and the disad.
Awesome.
Everybody good?
Yep.
I'm going to start my timer, we're going to talk for a second, and then I will go ahead and start.
Good.
Yes, I agree. Go.
Okay. On top, guys, first argument is we are changing. We are affecting all public institutions. Means that we meet your interpretation. Second is counter interpretation. That institutions of higher education refers to public institutions. C is we meet this interpretation. We are affecting public institutions. The fourth argument is counter standards. The A is debatable. This provides debatable ground on both sides because the effect of the public institutions is one of the largest draw students necessary means this argumentation. But why? Why this is going to affect all. Additionally, will be here said this is grammatically legitimate that the resolution does not preclude the necessity of a necessitation of all, but rather allows for parametrics. Additionally, D sees that parametrics is good. This allows for better affirmative flexibility to prevent them from being able to read every disadvantage that they want necessarily. Allows for the affirmative access to debate. Additionally, D here's that is that the affirmative threat to define the resolution reasonably as long as both grammatically legitimate and debatable. This is necessary to prevent top proceedings from misreading. Top Kelly arguments we would never be able to meet. They say ground they had ground in this debate. They could have made all their same argumentations on my cast are bad based on public institutions. They say it's in the literature. Public institutions are more in the literature because Obama's already been calling for this. Additionally, they say limits. They don't say either way. Limits are good, and they overload this by making use to all institutions. We are always linked. Additionally, then we say this is also, the top guy is also linked to the criticism because they are commodified the value and calling for and saying that they are creating a demand here. Good. Yep. Alternative. First argument is going to be the permutation. Do the plan and adopt the method of structure and historical criticism. That is, you want the
Structural and
structural and historical criticism. Couple of argumentation. First, we say that we can do the affirmative and call for criticism and to be able to break down this understanding. A couple of we say this is necessary in order to be able to change the structures themselves. Additionally, the second argument is going to be permutation that benefit the Trojan horse. That this allows us to get inside the structures of capitalism in order to be able to break them down from the inside out. We try to criticize from the outside or be able to so we can look back by Wall Street with the excellent example by Wall Street, but we just call for criticism, but didn't actually be able to break anything down. Only by work within the system are you able to break this down.
They say that they're not trying to collapse capitalism means that we can make this reform.
Good. They say they're not trying to collapse capitalism. This is in the alternative solvency means that we are able to make the necessary reforms and be able to break down the worst parts of it. Means additionally why the land is not necessarily key to be rejected. Means that the reforms can still happen. But on solvency itself, the first argument is no solvency. That there is no space outside of capitalist structures that capitalism becomes such a totalizing structure that there's no space outside of it. This means that we have to make reforms from the inside. But additionally, the next argument is going to be termed that you see the political you try to say that political structures aren't effective and that there's no mechanism for you to access this. However, this is exactly the problem. There's no the people that are within these political structures are the ones that have all the money and have all the guns. Means that this has a couple of implications. First, this is disadvantage to the criticism because the fact that this means that allows for the political elites to in order to isolate and destroy you and leads to worse value. In addition, second, this is no term with no solvency argument because the fact that there's no changing of these political elites from outside the system. You have to change them from the inside in order to be able to make the best advocacy. Additionally, third, this is net benefits to permutation because this allows us to work within political structure in order to be able to best break this down. Means that we are able to resolve this. You on the alternative solvency itself. First argument is that criticism alone does not be able to isn't able to change anything. You have to be able to back it up in order to be able to resolve this. Your criticism within this round doesn't actually change anything. Marx has been criticizing capitalism for the last 100 years and hasn't actually made any change back to work within the structures. You say on the permutation the cap is inertial. This is exactly our argument that you can't collapse the system. You have to make the necessary reforms from within in order to be able to break down. The affirmative is the resolution of this, and you say that you don't advocate for capitalism. For the collapse of capitalism means that there's no resolution to any of your impact stories on the criticism itself. Means that capitalism is inevitable. Then this is best. Additionally, the last argument on here is that capitalism is sustainable. That capitalism allows for the development of new resources in order to be able to resolve the internal conflicts and the access to resources. Means that this is the best system in order to be able to access. Good. Yep. On the links.
Gotta be fast.
The first argument is going to be termed that the plan is the methodological criticism based on classism. The entirety of the first advantage talks about access to education for rural population because it's an indication of the problems with the inherent capitalist system that excludes these individuals to periphery. Only the affirmative is able to better be able to break this and break down this understanding or be able to resolve your internal problem conflicts.
They say that we don't identify all poor populations, but we get that in our first.
Yes, they say we don't affect all. We don't isolate the effects on all poor populations, but rather that is our first impact story. This is the harm as the capitalist system is occurring that is affecting. Means that we have to resolve this in order to be able to better resolve all the internal conflicts of the capitalist system in order to be able to create the best performance. It means that the affirmative is the better solvency. You say that we are the one. Your second link is about how we are the white bourgeoisie who tries to include the periphery. This is not the argumentation. You say that not only is this rural population tend to be the most racialized form of poverty because it tends to affect black individuals, but additionally that we are better able to break this down through our understanding in order to be able to create the best performance. Good? Yep, go. The framework. There's not a lot of argumentation here. The affirmative is a methodological understanding. This is our ethic and our approach to the world. Means that we get access to the affirmative. You can have your one methodological test, but you do not get to exclude any of our impacts. We say that if you try to exclude our impacts, then it necessarily leads to the same form of structural balance and the same form of exclusionary that capitalism tries to create. Probably means that this really the criticism means that the framework debate doesn't matter. Good? Keep going. Disad. First argument is not unique to Republicans winning down the way. The Democrats are having a turnout problem. You can look to multiple statistics that have said that Democrats have indicated multiple polls that this is the least inclusive that they've won to be over the last several elections. That projected voter turnout for Democrats is the lowest in the election since 2006. Necessarily means that the Republicans want to win right now. Additionally, will be is that Republicans are ahead in several key states where Democrats have been winning. To Alaska as an excellent example, where the incumbent Democrat has a very tough re-election cycle, and this allowed for the Republicans show majorly addition Republicans are headed in multiple states such as Louisiana, where while the Democrats there have the plurality, the runoff election is going to allow the Republican win in most projections. Additionally, you say fundraising, however, the Republicans have been shown an increase in fundraising over the last several months indicates that Republicans are going to have this. Additionally, all your argumentation about Obama coming out in the election is just not true. Look at the fact that many Democrats are going right over Obama and starts going to try to get away from things like the Affordable Care Act in order because it's dragging them down. Additionally, the next argument is going to believe that people don't care about educational reform at least within this cycle. We say that education reform deals significantly down the road. Individual, this doesn't it's not the primary indication of any election. Additionally, the arguments would be turned. This allows for the Democrats to win that higher education has been a substantial right policy of the Democrats for several years. Indicates that a substantial reform now would be a win for the Democrats. Each turn the plan and breaks the political gridlock, and it shows that Democrats are able to get things done even when Republicans dragging them down. Indicates that they would be better able to resolve these internal harm politics. Additionally, of the impacts you say, additionally, no internal link to this. Iran has already left the table. Indicates that further conflict down the road is going to solve this issue. There's no tiebreaker to this because the fact that these sanctions would be over a year down the road. Indicates that the status quo would likely change before that happens. In case that the harms wouldn't.
Obama will veto the sanctions.
What? Also, Obama will veto the sanctions. There's no scenario in which they would have a veto precatory solvency. You say the plan is unconstitutional. First, the plan is constitutional. You making the supremacy clause that the Constitution allows for the federal government to make these laws. There's no ability for the courts to overturn it. Additionally, beyond it's durable, that we still be able to claim that the effects of the plan is going to happen down the road. Indicates that these rollback arguments are dumb. Additionally, the next argument here is about Title IX funding. First, we say there's no link to this because of the fact that institutions aren't going to move away from federal funding. Federal funding requires a large amount of money that they have. Means there's no reason for this. Additionally, Title IX affects all public institutions. Indicates that there's no effect to the plan. Additionally, on page 1, they make an argument that this is just going to become college is going to become the new high school. There's no articulation for what the story matters. Additionally, access to higher education is about training, even if it doesn't matter in the workforce.
Cool. Okay, it's going to be wow. There are a lot of pieces of paper here. Okay. Yeah. It's going to be T, then the K.
And in the order of the K?
Just the all.
Just the alternative?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Found it. Okay. The T to the K, then the then case, and then the disad.
Case in the order of solvency, advantage 1, advantage 2?
Yep.
And then disad on the bottom. Can I repeat the back to you?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, so I got T, the alternative,
Yep.
solvency debate, add 1, add 2, the disad.
Yep. Sounds good.
Lovely.
Cool. Is that ready?
Yeah.
Except that we meet the interpretation, even though it's probably wrong, we are not going for T. The only thing I have to answer is that the T is linked to the K because it is a quantification of valid. No explanation of why this should be a voter or why this is bad at all. We point that the Aff is running something that is unpredictable and not entirely in line with the resolution. Is probably the reason why we should be able to indict their methodology and make sure that they are topical. There's no reason why you should reject a team just for running T. That is a form of debate. Go to the K. Except the purpose of test of competition that means this is not an advocacy. They did not read it as an advocacy, means they can garner no offense in any of their turns. Also, you can extend caps ineffably instead. None of their turns, none of their impacts matter in a world where caps ineffable. We're not going for this position either. On the Agnew page. First of all, devastating if you just do not drop a link analysis on the court term. It says that you just assert that the government could do this on the commerce clause. So we said that specifically the precedent involved is Lopez v. United States, where the government tried to regulate whether or not firearms could be taken into around a school, and the court ruled that was unconstitutional because it was too far of an extension of the commerce clause, because there just was not a sufficient connection to be able to make this. This has already been ruled that schools do not fall under the commerce clause, and the government cannot regulate this. This is very key. You said that it's undesirable. We said that this is absolutely key to appropriate plan writing, at the point that the Aff can just write a plan that is not actually constitutional and not feasible and would be rolled back in any real world means that kills all real world education, kills all forms of class, because we are not able to debate about the specifics of the plan, because they just assert that they can bypass the law. It means that there is no structure to debate, no form of debate, so do not give them credence for the defense is durable. The impact of this argument is that first, their plan is not accurate, not feasible, and has no solvency. At the point that the court is going to roll this back, that is a reason why they are not going to be able to effectuate any change, but because they have conceded that it still leads to politics, means that the triple link to the disads and cause nuclear war and don't solve anything. I'm not going to Title IX to go on to case. On the case arguments, on the link argument, they drop the argument that this is not this is a question of perception, that that people do not want federal government being involved in education. When they concede this link, that means that it is going to be devastating for them on politics, because it is going to rally the Republican base. Specifically, Republicans hate this form of it. I want you to extend that link. I also want you to extend the spotlight argument, like if they have any solvency to this argument, that probably means that there's going to be major other reforms coming if they want to try and make this argument, which means that this is just going to supercharge the link to the dissent, because people do not like that. Look to the arguments about Common Core. People do not find that popular. Also, we say that because plan caps tuition, that's probably going to be a reason why schools get more expensive in other ways, because they have to offset costs and cut costs in other ways. Probably means that they will not be able to solve anything. Also, on the impact argument, you said that accessibility and college will just become the new high school. You said that there's no explanation of what that means. We said that that means that college will no longer be sufficient, and people will start needing to go to grad school to get degrees and to get jobs and things like that. That means that you'll not be able to solve anything. Also, they have dropped the argument that this is a public-private distinction, at the point that they are only addressing public institutions. That's the reason why you are still going to lead to that dichotomy of the rich white people school and the poor everyone else school, which is going to be devastating for them, because it means that you are still not solving the structural problems involved. On the education impact, first of all, we said that the education doesn't necessarily solve the point that there's still okay. The only thing I want is on the ruralism impact, the point that you're not solving for outreach and all the structural problems of ruralism. That's probably the reason that you don't solve. Just cutting costs is not going to be sufficient, at the point that there are colleges that are cheaper. That is not a reason why ruralism is solving. Also, you said that this leads to the logic of genocide and allows us to exterminate people. We said at the point that we're not genociding against people who live in rural communities. That is not a feasible argument. Go on. On the econ dissent, first of all, we said that, actually go to the dissent now. I might come back to the econ argument. Devastating for them on the next argument, when they concede the entirety of our links scenario, that means that GOP is going to be rallying their base together. The federal government is telling all colleges that they have to be capped at $6,000 a year. You can also extend the unconstitutionality as a reason why this supercharges the link to the dissent, because Republicans hate the fact that the federal government is extending its power under the Commerce Clause. Also, the Obamacare ruling actually undermined that their ability to do that, which is probably the reason why you can't. On the link level, you say no link because people don't care about education reform. Absolutely no warrant to this argument, and it's absurd. People, of course, care about education reform. If the entire thesis of your two advantages are right, it sounds like people should care about it. Also, we said the Republicans care about the fact that the federal government is involved in education. You can look to all of the argumentation about Common Core and the SAT and No Child Left Behind are all things that have been criticized by Republicans lately, because they see that as the federal government overreach, and the federal government is telling my kids what to do. You said that Iran has left the table, or not true. That we said the talks are working the steps with the United States and Iran has been communicating and going forward on the talks. You can extend all our internal link arguments that says that Iran has been stopping its enrichment of uranium and talking to the United States about this. You said that there's no time frame. We said that sanctions are set to go into place right after the elections. Means that this is an immediate time frame. In like 4 weeks, we're going to be faced with the next that Iran is going to start proliferating at the point that sanctions are going to go back. In fact, that's the point that you can see. Okay, you said that Obama's going to veto sanctions. We said that it doesn't matter at the point that it looks like a bad faith, right? If we are in negotiations with someone and then we suddenly slap them with more sanctions, or we try to slap them with more sanctions, that's going to be a reason that we are still going to trip the link.
Some Dem support, so they override the veto.
There's still going to be Dem support for this, which means it's going to override the veto, which will pass it. Also, Obama probably wants to look tough on foreign policy, which means he's going to do it anyway, because he's going to be forced to. You can see the fact that Iran is going to pull out of talks when sanctions go back into effect, which means that you are going to be devastating that. You have conceded all the entirety of the internal link and impact scenario, which means that you are conceding a nuclear war scenario. On the uniqueness now. You say that Republicans are going to be winning. I would say that this is absolutely not true. You can look to all of our arguments and say that Democrats are still going to have gone ahead. There's been a almost 10-point switch from being Republican leading to being Democrat leading. We said that, and key races like the Greg Orman in Kansas, it is specifically polling Democrat. We said that in other third-party candidates like the one in Montana. Your question.
Isn't Greg Orman in Kansas an independent?
Yeah.
He's more liberal, so coming through the
He's more liberal. He said he was caucus with Democrats. You said the Republicans are in the key states. You said Alaska that is not responsive to the fact that you have conceded that the Democrats only need 3 states and they're all trending Democrat. You should have conceded that analysis. You said that you had a poll of the lowest turnout. We said the Republican that the Democrats are perpetually ahead on turnout because they get the women and the minorities. But when the Republicans are able to rally their base with the narrative of Obama shifting focus from things like ISIS and suddenly looking at education reform, which everyone is super angry about, that's the reason that you were going to be able to rally the base. At the point that there's any risk of, you said the Republicans are increasing fundraising. You to ignore the specific awards that say the Democrats just have better funds. That's conceded argument. You said the Democrats are going right. That does not matter in a world where Democrats are not going to pass the sanctions in the status quo. Yeah.
You say Democrat turnout is the lowest since 2006. That was a Democratic wave election. That
was a Democratic wave election. Probably means that even if it's lowest since 2006, that still sounds pretty damn high. Go on to the econ collapse scenario here. First of all, no impact to this argument at the point that the student debt has been rising for the past, whatever, you talked about like 30 years. Probably reason that it is not going to specifically collapse, speaking no time frame. They have no time frame here, no explanation of why the student debt collapse is going to collapse things any worse than the 2008 economy. At the point that you have not explained the fact that why specifically student debt is key. We said that the economy is naturally resilient and goes in waves of ups and downs. Probably the reason why you are not going to be able to do this. Also, we said that, also things like debt forgiveness and other ways of refinancing loans is probably going to help check back against students. God, yeah, all bursting the bubble at the same time. Also, we said that student loans are due and are not, we said that's not going to happen. Also, we said that student loans are still probably a thing, and we said that at the point that you're not ending a substantial amount of, poverty that you're not going to.
Order is going to be an overview, the court turn, politics, and then the advantages and the original order.
Cool. Overview, solvency, advantages order?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Even if they were winning any solvency on their case, we are still winning. There is absolutely indeterminate time frame to all their advantages. We are winning the solvency term that there will never be any solvency. Even if the plan lasts a bit of time before the court rolls it back, that won't be enough time to figure all their back because they're all incredibly long term. They require people to go through the education system for years. They require colleges to fundamentally change the way in which they recruit girl students, which probably means they're never going to have any solvency before the courts roll back. But even if they did, the advanced scenario would happen first. Go on to the court turn. They're going to go hard with this argument that the supremacy clause proves. I don't understand what this argument is. Avery is pretty slayer in this argument when she tells you the details of this decision. Lopez versus the United States, where the Supreme Court has ruled that the Supreme Court has ruled that the government does not have authority to regulate something like firearms. That probably means they don't have the ability to regulate what the price of a private good. They probably don't have the ability to tell college what it's cost to be, which means that you don't have any education. They're going to go hard for this argument that fiat is durable. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad for education because it means that the firm can just have whatever plan they want and just say, oh, it's durable. That's not saying that it's unconstitutional. You should refer this on this question. The first argument on the specific good for education because we learn how things work in the real world. The second argument is specific focuses on lazy debate. We would just flip out arguments and then say, oh, fiat is durable, so we don't actually have to be accurate. Do you have something?
Nope.
Cool. Go on to disadvantage now. Overview on the disadvantage. The uniqueness on politics is fundamentally indeterminate. When we are winning the links, that guarantees a solvency for the GOP. Yeah, for the GOP to win. There is no way to prove who will actually win the election because the polls flip back and forth every day. But when we win, that this is going to be the biggest issue. And when they are saying this is going to be the biggest issue, that they are spotlighting that this will be the issue that suddenly all government is talking about. Now they're going to lead to further reforms. That absolutely means the GOP wins the Senate that looks like a terrible Democratic policy, which means that we don't even need to win the uniqueness because the links are simply too strong, but we'll win the uniqueness anyway because it's pretty dope. Go on to the uniqueness side. You can extend the now so that you see that election apparently had low turnout was a wave election. This is pretty devastating for them because it means that we probably won't even need to win a turnout arguments.
Fundraising and Obama's they're trending ahead in 3 states.
Yeah, actually, that's sufficient on uniqueness. Just go on to the links now. They're going to hurt this argument that people don't care about education reform. This is pretty patronizing when all they tell you is just people don't care about education reform. We clearly tell you that people are incensed about the Common Core. You can extend this to the bipartisan issue that everyone doesn't want the federal government intervening in education and then sees it as a state issue. This is a major issue. You can look how Bobby Jindal has made this a big issue in his election as governor. This is an issue that is empirically successful, particularly at rally the Republican base. You can also extend the critical second link argument that rallies the Republican base in swing states, and that all they need is the rally base. In South Dakota, Kansas, Alaska, the Republicans' advantage is simply so massive that all they need is to rally their base. This is something that makes them incredibly angry. You can extend the analysis that the Tea Party is empirically good. The Tea Party is empirically good at using this to mobilize, which means that it's go on to the internal links now. They're going to say that they say that Iran's left the table. I don't think they really give you any analysis of this other than just likely asserting that Iran's left the table. I'm pretty sure we're winning arguments that Iran's conceding, making concessions now that the U.S. is making concessions now that that's sufficient to win. You have conceded the entire impact scenario. This will necessarily lead to Iranian first strike. Even if we're winning that Obama won't veto, but even if he doesn't, there's not a veto-proof majority, then Iran will still see it as bad faith move because Congress does have faith in Iran, which will still trigger these impacts because Iran will still pull out a talk which triggers the impacts. You are conceding that this leads to extinction. You're conceding that this leads to a 1,600% rise in the price of oil prices, which is sufficient to check. Also, it has an immediate time frame. We control the time frame on all their issues because none of them take place later than a few years. Once the disadvantage happens, then we don't know what impact will actually happen on their advantages because they're fundamentally determined. Go on to the first advantage. Now you can extend the slave argument. This still leads to the public-private distinction, coupled with the argument that it comes to new high school means you don't actually have any long-term solvency. But even if you did, it would take years, and the court would already rule back on the second disadvantage. You can extend that war. Time frame checks all of this. We are winning. This happens within weeks. I don't know when their advantages happen.
There will be an overview on top, then like the alternative sheet, the links sheet, and the impact sheet. Followed by politics, and then the Aff case in order.
Alright, you're going to have to repeat this back. So, the overview, the link sheet,
the alternative sheet.
Next up,
the link sheet,
okay.
the impacts sheet,
Okay,
the politics disad,
got it.
solvency, sorry, the affirmative solvency,
Yep, got it.
and then advantage 1, advantage 2.
Okay. I'm ready when you are, sir.
It's going to be an easy ballot for Nevada CN today when my opponents are making key concessions on the critique and key concessions on their disad. Means that Nevada's going to win. On to the K. As an overview, my opponents concede Corey's argument that CAP is sustainable and that we are able to resolve the structural problems within capitalism. Means that we are the only team that is resolving the impacts they read out of the LOC. If you're going to kick the K, you need to answer our offense on the links sheet when we say that we don't need the perm to be able to solve. On the alt sheet, the only argument I need you to extend is that CAP is sustainable and that we're going to be able to resolve these problems internally. On the links sheet, the argument that I need you to extend is the link term that Corey says that the plan is our methodological criticism based upon classism and that we expose this through rural populations as well as non-rural populations through impact scenario 1 on advantage 1 and impact scenario 3 on advantage 1. What this means is that we are able to methodologically solve for the criticism. This is pretty damning for them when they read extinction scenarios and value to life claims coming out of the LOC. That means that the affirmative has conceded access to these impact scenarios, and we are the only team that is able to resolve value to life claims. You're going to evaluate value to life claims first based on their framework, but second, also because individuals without value to life have no need for life if they have no purpose in life. It means that the value to life claims are always going to come before their death claims that they're making off of the disad. It means that Nevada CN has won the debate today. On to the impacts. Extend their second impact scenario where they make the value to life claims. Extend their third impact scenario where they talk about ecological collapse leading to extinction. This means that A, we control the individual's value to life. Means that we control the root cause of all claims in the debate today. But second, we also control an extinction scenario, which you're going to be able to weigh against the disad, because even if means that you're going to be preferring the K impacts over the disad, because even if you're able to resolve these issues, if that's just inevitably going to lead to extinction in the future, means that we need to resolve this inevitability now. Are you happy with the Corey?
The only other argument is that they extend the permutation. Permutation doesn't matter, avoiding the uniqueness question about how there are problems in capitalism that we resolve.
Right, they extend the permutation, but that's just a question of the uniqueness. Just because the alternative isn't competitive doesn't mean that the non-unique disad that you read before you get to the alternative goes away. That's why we get access to the links and the impacts, and that's what your framework sets up. Are you happy with the Corey?
Yes.
Cool. On to politics. Couple of key concessions that are going to be pretty problematic for my opponents on politics. The first argument that I want you to extend in court is second link term about Democrats are going to win because they've been pursuing higher education policy in their campaign platform for years, means that this is perceived as a massive Democratic win, is going to be a rallying point for Democratic voters, means that more Democratic voters are going to turn out and going to vote Democratic, means that we're going to resolve this question, but more of this goes cold conceded. They never argue against this. The only other argument they make is that Republicans are going to be able to rally the base, however, the point at which Republicans are the ones bringing the win. There's no propensity for the Republicans to be able to rally the base better than the Democrats. The next argument that I want you to extend is Corey's third link turn about how the Democrats are going to be viewed as breaking the political gridlock, means that we're going to resolve this question. When the Democrats are viewed as breaking the political gridlock, they're going to be the party that is going to be rewarded. You can look to the proof of this from the 2012 election when Republicans were punished for creating the gridlock, means that the party that best avoids gridlock is the one that necessarily gets voted in recent politics, means that we're going to be resolving these questions better. The next argument that I want you to look to is
I want you to get the uniqueness level to extend that there's projected low turnout, which is going to kill them.
right. Extend Corey's argument that there's projected low turnout that is going to be killing Democratic participation right now. This is the uniqueness argument that they don't answer that informs our second link turn that they drop. When we say Democrats are not turning out right now, and then we give Democrats a big win, which is a rallying point, and more Democrats turns out, it means we resolve this question and that Democrats are going to win the election as a result. We are now controlling the uniqueness and the link story that we need to make this disad go away. When my opponents are going for time frame arguments without the disad impacts, they're never going to be able to win on that, because the way that they're trying to compare their impacts against the affirmative case is through time frame, but if their impacts never happen, then guess what? The time frame's infinite, means that we're going to be winning on case. Corey, do you want anything else on the sheet?
Off the table and then move on.
Right. More we can extend Corey's argumentation that Iran has already left the table. They try to say that Iran has been in talks. However, Iran hasn't been in talks for months as a result of the ISIS crisis. Is probably the reason why this is already failing in the status quo. Onto the framework, or sorry, onto the solvency. They respond to Corey's argumentation about the supremacy clause by, once again, quoting Lopez v. US, having Lopez v. US was a commercial clause, which was about public high schools. This is totally different. You can look to the last 20 years of educational policy that prove that we're going to be able to resolve this more. We can look to the supremacy clause, which is what Corey was referencing, which is why we're going to be able to resolve this, because we're functioning through the supremacy clause, means that their argumentation gets no traction here. The next argument that I want you to look to is, sorry, do you want anything else here, Corey?
Go to advantage one.
Cool. Advantage one. Alright, they concede our spotlighting link, which gives us access to, and our perception link, which means more people are going to be there, means we still get access to the increase in resources, which is the little b under impact scenario 2. Moreover, we also get impact to little c under scenario 2, which means these people are going to be advocating for the communities, means we get resolution of cyclical poverty. On advantage 2, they don't respond to our $1 trillion claim, means that we still get access to this argumentation.
First, this was an awesome round, seriously. Like, excellent round. And it was really difficult because after the MOR, I was like, yeah, I think opposition's pretty much got this wrapped up. I think you guys are waxing them on the politics debate in a couple of places. The lowest in 06, the Democratic wave argument, I'm really buying. I'm buying your 3 states needed, as well as the Alaska, South Dakota. I'm buying your Jindal analysis about how Common Core is a big argument, and I think the spotlight and perception, supercharging the links to your politics disad is beautiful, and I think the way you guys deploy it is really strategic. I'm buying that there's actually a time frame in your politics disad as compared to the advantages, right? 4 weeks or right after the election, the DA happens. I'm buying your magnitude implications of extinction, right? I don't get a lot of well-warranted arguments about your Iran has not left the table, right? Like, I don't get exactly what, when they're giving me these specific concessions about like uranium enrichments. So I'm getting kind of more of the fleshed out arguments. The Dems solve for gridlock. It kind of like, you guys make these arguments that your fiat's durable, right? The Democrats solve for gridlock, which effectively makes them look awesome, right, on the politics debate. That kind of, like, this debate is, like, this argument isn't so much had, other than an Arthur speech where he kind of talks about how durable solvency is bad for education, and you guys kind of just usurp certain arguments. In light of all of this, I still end up prioritizing the critique first, and I think the perm solves back, and so I vote government. I think that your guys' framework says I should evaluate methodological interpretations, right? These have to come first, these kinds of questions. I buy that the PMC is an instance of methodological intrusion on classism or your historical structuralism arguments of capitalism. I think their extensions of cap inevitable and cap sustainable makes the perm unique, right? And it's the only instance of solving back for value to life claims and extinction. So even though you guys win the politics, I mean, I think you guys, hands down, I think they would probably tell you you won the politics disad, but I don't think you win the prioritization that the politics disad comes before the critique. I think the perm has some access to solving these back, right? It is some instance of interrogating the structural historical implications of class. which would solve back for value of life and extinction claims. That's my RFD.
All right.
Any questions? Like, you guys want to ask me later? Or? I know, like, I don't want to, like, I didn't.
No,
You know, I mean,
just
honestly,
give it
if the LOR would not have occurred, I think you guys would have won the round. But the way in which you kicked out of those positions left a lot of doors open, and so I think then
you can evaluate the perms and advocacy.
I think that's what they went for. The perms and advocacy, the perm itself sells back for the K.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Right.
No, yeah, that was definitely. I kicked out of that really badly.
Yeah, I have a lot of offense that's just kind of clean. Clean is like it's stuck there, and I have this kind of perm is a test of competition, but I don't have that coming out of their speech. I don't know if it was made. I vote for the perm. Yeah, great job.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.